Hello, everyone. This particular topic I have today, I think could be a little controversial, but I really hope it sparks discussion. And I really want some people to comment here and give me your feelings, your views on what I'm saying, and also maybe some choice words and lyrics as we see this pan out. Basically, the question is George Harrison, after all is said and done, the best lyricist in the Beatles? And this came about, and it's a little plug here I'm doing for a show, Talk More Talk, that I did recently. We had a subject on Talk More Talk. Please check it out. Subscribe to Talk More Talk. There's a little publicity for it. We talked about our favorite lyrics of George Harrison's, both with the Beatles or apart from the Beatles. Now, George always gets overshadowed, of course, we know, by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. But I've always maintained that there was a period in George's life where he was at least equal to John and Paul, and that was around 1968 and 69, in my opinion, when he wrote songs like While My Guitar Gently Weeps and Something and Here Comes the Sun. In the case of Something and Here Comes the Sun, it's arguable that those are the best two songs on the Abbey Road album. But it's funny because I've been a Beatles fan, a fan of George and the other three for decades, and only now, at this latest stage in my life, by doing this exercise that I mentioned for Talk More Talk, the show, did I really realize, George's lyrics are amazing. And in fact, I'm starting to think that quite possibly George Harrison was the best lyricist of the group. And you can see that in his solo music a lot. George's music, the actual songs, like the melodies, the tunes, to me may not be as good as John and Paul's. I want to say before anybody gets any feelings that I'm putting down John and Paul. First of all, John is my personal favorite Beatle, and I think I've always thought he was a great lyricist. I think Paul McCartney. I go along with this to this day. I always say I think is the best songwriter of all the Beatles. And what I mean by that is, in terms of being able to craft a melody, it's amazing the gift he has. It's a miracle that he could be writing for all these decades since he was a teenager. And now he's in his 80s and he's still able to come up with all these melodies which sound fresh and they sound different and they stick in your head and they're earworms. But when it comes to lyrics, although Paul McCartney has written some amazing lyrics, let's get that straight. I'm not saying he doesn't, but there's the old cliche that Paul was more a music person, John was more the word person, the lyric person. A lot of people can show you examples where John could write great music and where Paul could write great lyrics. That's for sure. But I think when you weigh them together, Paul was probably the weakest lyricist of John, Paul, and George. While I think he's the best songwriter overall, McCartney, in terms of melody and all that, when it comes to the words, I don't think he was the best of the three. I always thought John was the best of the three, and maybe because, with all respect to John, maybe because he's been gone so many years now. We lost him, over 43 years ago. Maybe I'm not thinking as much about his work. But let's get back to George. Even from the Beatles days, some of the lyrics are really amazing for a guy that was only in his very early 20s. Like the line from the song Think for Yourself, for example. Think for yourself off Rubber Soul. I always was amazed by the line. Although your mind's opaque, try thinking more if just for your own sake. The future still looks good and you've got time to rectify all the things that you should. Always thinking, always philosophizing, always thinking about, mystical stuff, deep stuff. Sometimes George, as we know, could be very good with sarcastic humor in his songs. And this stuff can be found even as early as Don't Bother Me. Okay, now Don't Bother Me was the first song George ever wrote. I think it's a great song. He didn't like it. I understand, and an artist is often his own worst critic. But I love the song Don't Bother Me. And just even the fact that while the words to Don't Bother Me for the first song that he did were nothing really profound, it's still great that he was able to write, I got no time for you right now, don't bother me. That was so different from songs on that album, like All My Loving, for example. All My Loving I Will Send to You. He's saying, I got no time for you right now. Don't bother me, and I'll never be the same if I don't get it back again. That kind of thing. Even Love You Too from Revolver. That's amazing. Each day just goes so fast. I turn around, it's past. You don't get time to hang a sign on me. Here's a guy at the time. What was George at the time? 23? Something like that. And then all the lines in there. A lifetime is so short. A new one can't be bought. I mean, these kind of things. There's people standing around who'll screw you in the ground. They'll fill you in with all the sins you'll see. It's amazing to me, that it's not that I ever overlooked George's words or these songs. I've loved these songs my entire life for decades. But incredible that it's only hitting me now through this exercise that I did for Talk More Talk with my 3 co-hosts. And tune in because you'll see what their choices are. I'm going to read a few of these lyrics that I presented on the show. These are lyrics that I presented on the show. And here's another one from a song called Answers at the End. Scan not a friend with a microscopic glass. You know his faults. Now let his foibles pass. Life is one long enigma, my friend. So read on, the answer's at the end. And then the chorus says, don't be so hard on the ones that you love. It's the ones that you love we think so little of. How deep is that? It's really deep. I think that what happens with George, and this is just my guess, is that I've said before how I thought that Paul McCartney was a great tunesmith, a great melodist. He writes great melodies. And John, too. I think John and Paul arguably write better songs in the sense of music. I don't think George might be quite as good musically. So I think a lot of times all these great lyrics get lost. That's not to say that you got to watch everything you say here. I don't want to offend any fans, but George has written some great melodies, some great tunes. But I think a lot of times his strength is in the lyrics. Here's another one. We all know the song from All Things Must Pass, Isn't It a Pity? Even those lyrics, isn't it a pity? Isn't it a shame? How we break each other's hearts and cause each other pain. How we take each other's love without thinking anymore. Forgetting to give back. Isn't it a pity? Some things take so long, but how do I explain when not too many people can see we're all the same? And because of all their tears, their eyes can't hope to see the beauty that surrounds them. Isn't it a pity? Deep stuff. Again, this is not just, Michelle, my belle, these are words that go together well, and again, it's not like I'm dissing Paul, as I say, Let It Be has got some amazing lyrics from Paul. I guess, I would say a song like, Some Days from Paul off Flaming Pie are amazing lyrics. Paul could write amazing lyrics, but George, here's another song, from the 33 1/3 album called See Yourself. It's easier to tell a lie than it is to tell the truth. It's easier to kill a fly than it is to turn it loose. It's easier to criticize somebody else than to see yourself. And then it's easier to give a sigh and be like all the rest who stand around and crucify you while you do your best. It's easier to see the books upon the shelf than to see yourself. And these are only a few songs, folks. These are only a few songs. I'm going to give you one more. This is a song called Any Road from the Brainwashed album, which is a really good George album and often overlooked. There are a lot of lyrics in this song, a lot of verses in this song, but I've just jotted down a few. Here they are. I've been traveling through the dirt and the grime, from the past to the future, through the space and the time, traveling deep beneath the waves, in watery grottos and mountainous caves. But, oh Lord, we've got to fight with the thoughts in the head, with the dark and the light. No use to stop and stare, and if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Oh yeah, you just don't win. It's so far out, the way out is in. Bow to God and call him sir. But if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And there's a lot of other lyrics in there. And I'm getting a little like chills here, a little goosebumps, because I've been a fan of these songs. I've been a fan of George group with the Beatles and solo on his own for decades. Like I said, I could name all kinds of great lyrics. Living in the Material World, Sue Me, Sue You Blues, you know. Just thoughts that pop in my head. The song All Things Must Pass, the song Run of the Mill. I'm just naming titles now. I'm not going to read them all. I mean, there's like hundreds of songs. But really think about this the next time you listen to George Harrison's music, Beatles and solo. The man was amazing with his words. And I think sometimes he gets dwarfed next to John Lennon and Paul McCartney, the Lennon and McCartney genius team, that he gets forgotten. And I think it's because maybe his tunes are not always as easily hummable or memorable in all cases as Paul's. That his words, his poetry, his insight, his philosophies, his, like I said, sarcastic wit, um, his mystical side, his religious side, his deep held beliefs. It is incredible, this man's lyrics. And I'm sitting here thinking, what am I? Am I like 17 years old? Am I just discovering this artist for my first time here? It's hitting me like a ton of bricks at this point in my life. And I really enjoyed making this video, and I really want to hear your thoughts, your opinions on what I've said, and maybe even some lyrics if you want to share of George's best or most deep for you. Thanks, everybody.